Met my girlfriend at a funeral and fell in love, then overheard her on the phone saying that she only started dating me because her friends dared her to date someone so dumb and ugly. Never thought I'd have to use this old account, but I'm really stuck and need some advice before I potentially nuke what has been so far a good 8-month relationship. I'm likely going to paraphrase or write something similar to what happened because I've spent the whole day trying to remember how it exactly happened and what was said and done from here on out. So for a quick background. My GF, 24F, and I, 27M, have been dating for around 8 months now. I first met her at a funeral of all places. I wasn't close to the deceased, they were a friend's uncle, I was just along to keep him company. My buddy Marcus had been devastated by his uncle's passing, they were extremely close, having spent every summer together fishing at his cabin in Maine. Marcus practically begged me to come with him for moral support, and I couldn't say no to a friend in need. The funeral was held at one of those old churches, all stained glass and polished wood. The day was gloomy. I stood by Marcus during the service, offering a shoulder when he needed it, but during the reception afterward, he was surrounded by family members sharing memories, and I stepped back to give them space. In any case, I wasn't particularly sad looking at the reception. I was talking with one of Marcus's family friends in the corner of the hall, an older gentleman who had known the uncle for decades and was sharing some surprisingly funny stories about their youth. I found myself smiling, which she, my soon-to-be girlfriend, noticed from across the room. She approached with a glass of something amber-colored that I'm pretty sure wasn't just apple juice, given the reception had an open bar. Her hair was pulled back in a tasteful updo, and she wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to look both appropriate for a funeral and stunning at the same time. She made a pretty morbid joke asking if I put him in the casket. "You're smiling a bit too much for a funeral," she said with a raised eyebrow. "Planning your next victim, or did you already accomplish your mission with the guy in the box?" It was so blunt I just sort of snort/laughed and nearly choked on my drink. The elderly gentleman I'd been talking to excused himself with a knowing smile, and suddenly it was just the two of us. We got to chatting all afternoon, finding ourselves in that strange bubble that sometimes forms at somber events, where you connect with someone unexpectedly. I learned her name was Ellie, and she was the deceased's neighbor's daughter, practically family by extension. She'd grown up calling him Uncle Joe despite no blood relation. I told her about my friendship with Marcus, and somehow the conversation flowed from there to our jobs, our shared love of obscure indie films, and our mutual hatred for olives on pizza. By the end of the wake, I had her number in my phone, and a strange feeling that something significant had just happened in my life. As I drove home that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Meeting someone at a funeral seemed like the start of either a terrible rom-com or a horror movie, but something about her felt different. She was funny, witty, pretty, and a genuinely fun girl to be around. So of course I took a chance and asked her out 3 days later, which she accepted rather eagerly. My ego was through the roof at that. Our first date was at this hole-in-the-wall ramen place that I discovered a few months prior. I was nervous she'd find it too casual, but she seemed genuinely excited about it. We sat at the counter, watching the chef work his magic, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. She had this way of making me feel like I was the most interesting person in the world, asking thoughtful questions and actually listening to my answers. After dinner, we walked around downtown, stopping for ice cream despite the chilly weather. I remember thinking how refreshing it was to be with someone who didn't take themselves too seriously. The date ended with a surprisingly intense kiss against my car that left me dizzy and planning our second date before I'd even driven away. That weekend, we went hiking at a nearby state park, and I was impressed by her enthusiasm for climbing over rocks and wading through streams in pursuit of the perfect view. By our third date, a cooking class where we both failed spectacularly at making soufflés, I was already falling hard. The first 3 months flew by. She introduced me to her apartment, I introduced her to my friends, who immediately took to her charm and quick wit. Eventually, we started spending more nights together than apart, and at the 6-month mark, when my lease was up, it seemed natural to suggest we move in together. We found a 2-bedroom house to rent, with a small backyard where I could grill and she could start the vegetable garden she'd always wanted. It wasn't much, but it felt like hours, and I loved coming home to her every day. I hadn't met many of her friends yet, which I thought was a bit odd. She'd introduced me to her parents early on. But she always seemed to have excuses for why I couldn't meet her friend group. They were busy, or events got cancelled, or someone was going through something complicated. I didn't push it, figuring she'd bring me around when she was ready. Looking back, I should have seen that as a red flag, but I was too smitten to question it. In my mind, we were building something real and lasting. I'd even started casually browsing jewelry stores, thinking about what kind of ring might suit her hands. I came home a little earlier from work last night. I was covering a shift and the bloke I was covering came in anyway, so they didn't need me for 8 hours. My boss Jeremy had practically shoved me out the door, saying go surprise the girlfriend of yours. Maybe pick up some flowers on the way. I thought it was a great idea. We'd both been working long hours lately and hadn't had much quality time together. So I stopped by this little florist shop near our house and picked up a bouquet of sunflowers. The shop owner even threw in some baby's breath and wrapped it with a ribbon when I told her they were for a surprise. I was feeling pretty good about myself, imagining the smile on Ellie's face when I walked in. Anyway, I came home earlier than planned and the front door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual. Ellie sometimes forgot to lock it when she was home alone. I could hear her laughing from the kitchen, that full-bodied laugh that had first drawn me to her. I assumed she was watching something funny on her laptop while cooking, as she often did. I quietly set down my bag and the flowers, planning to sneak up and surprise her with a hug from behind. But as I got closer, I realized she was on the phone with someone. I was about to surprise her with a little jump scare when she said, and I quote, "I never meant for this whole thing with BF to last so long. I'd never normally date someone like him." I froze in the hallway, my heart suddenly pounding in my ears. There was a pause, and then she continued, "I know, right? But he's actually really sweet. And the sex isn't bad either." Another pause, followed by more laughter. "Oh God, Tina, stop. I'm not that desperate. But seriously, you and Stacy were such bitches for making me do this. 8 months. Can you believe it's been that long?" My hand must have slipped against the wall, or maybe I made some unconscious sound of distress. She spotted me shortly after saying that. I admit, I made a noise I can't even begin to explain, and she heard me. Her head whipped around, phone still pressed to her ear, and her eyes widened in horror when she saw me standing there. I'd never seen someone go that pale before. The blood literally drained from her face, leaving her looking ashen and sick. She was all wide, teary eyes and quivering lips. "I'll call you back," she whispered into the phone, and then let it drop to the counter with a clatter. How long have you been standing there?" she asked. "Long enough," I replied. "What did you mean by that, Ellie? About never meaning for this thing to last so long?" She tried to approach me, but I stepped back, suddenly not wanting her anywhere near me. "Babe, it's not what you think," she started, tears already forming in her eyes. "Really? Because it sounded a lot like you've been dating me as some kind of joke," I said. "Is that it? Am I just some charity case to you and your friends?" GF then spent the next hour or so confessing that she never planned to date me, but once her friends found out she'd given me her number, they found a pic of me online and apparently found me so hilariously unattractive that GF just had to fake date me for a week to give me hope. She sat on our couch with tears streaming down her face as she told me everything. How her friends Tina and Stacy had always been the pretty popular girls since high school, and how she'd always followed their lead. How they'd looked me up on Facebook after she mentioned meeting someone interesting at a funeral, and had laughed themselves sick over my profile picture. They kept saying stuff like, "Seriously, that guy? With the receding hairline and the dad bod?" She explained, her voice small and ashamed. And Tina was like, "You should totally go out with him just once. Give the poor guy some hope before you crush his dreams." And I agreed. I wish I was joking. Her friends and apparently GF are all still stuck in their mean girl high school phase. These were women in their mid-20s, with careers and adult lives, still playing cruel games with people's feelings like they were 16 and ruling the school hallways. GF agreed, but I guess apparently forgot about it because we'd been dating for 8 months, not 1 week. She told me that she was stupid for agreeing with it and that I was a really good bloke, and that she really did love me, but she never expected to actually feel that way about me. After our first date, I was going to call it off like I promised them, she admitted, twisting her hands in her lap. "But then you kissed me, and it was really nice. So I thought, maybe one more date wouldn't hurt. And then one more turned into another, and suddenly I realized I was actually falling for you." Why? Because I'm not her usual type of guy. When I asked her to elaborate, she mumbled that she didn't initially find me attractive at all, but after dating for a few weeks she stopped caring about my looks. "My exes were all these conventionally attractive guys," she said, as if that would somehow make me feel better. "You know, the gym rat type with perfect hair and teeth. But they were all such assholes in the end. You're different. You're kind and thoughtful, and you actually listen when I talk." I admit I sort of lost my temper here and called her an immature waste of my time. I told her I wished she'd just dumped me a week into dating, because to find all this shit out 8 months in, when I cared about her, loved her, was fucking foul. "How am I supposed to trust anything you say now?" I shouted, pacing back and forth across our living room. "Was any of it real? Or am I just the safe, boring option you settled for because your hot exes treated you like garbage?" She flinched at my words, more tears spilling down her cheeks. "It is real," she insisted, getting up to try and reach for me. "I love you. I love our life together. Please, you have to believe me." But I couldn't. In that moment, all I could see was her laughing with her friends at my expense, describing me as some sort of charity case she'd taken on. All those times she'd conveniently had excuses for why I couldn't meet her friends suddenly made perfect sense. She'd been embarrassed by me all along. "I need to get out of here," I said finally, heading to our bedroom to grab some clothes. "I can't even look at you right now." She followed me, pleading and crying, but I tuned her out. I threw some clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop and phone charger, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Does it matter?" I shot back, but then sighed. "My mom's. I need space to think." As I was opening the front door, my eyes fell on the bouquet of sunflowers I'd brought home. Such a stupid, optimistic gesture from a man who had no idea his entire relationship was built on a cruel joke. I'm staying with my mom at the moment because I need space to think and vent. My mom has always been my rock, the person I turn to when everything goes sideways. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and simply said, "Oh, honey," before pulling me into a hug. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that until I found myself fighting back tears in her arms. She didn't push for details right away, just set me up in my old bedroom, brought me a sandwich and some tea, and sat with me while I picked at the food. Eventually, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly appalled as the story unfolded. "What should I do, Mom?" I asked when I'd finished, feeling like a lost kid again despite being 27 years old. She sighed deeply. "Only you can decide that, sweetheart. But ask yourself this, even if she does love you now, can you ever trust her again? And do you want to be with someone who would ever, even for a moment, treat another person that way?" Those questions have been echoing in my head all night. Would I be TA if I dumped GF for this? I turned my phone off shortly after arriving at Mom's. I couldn't handle the thought of seeing messages or calls from Ellie, not until I'd had time to process everything. Mom respected my need for space, occasionally checking in but mostly leaving me to my thoughts. Tonight, I sat out on my mom's back porch, staring at the stars and trying to make sense of everything. I keep replaying moments from our relationship in my head, wondering if they were real or just part of her extended pity date. The way she'd look at me sometimes, with such warmth and tenderness, was that genuine, or was she just a better actress than I gave her credit for? 8 fucking months of my life. 8 months of building what I thought was a future with someone. All based on a lie. Edit. Wow, okay. Did not expect this much feedback, blimey. So I've turned my phone back on and it's a mess of texts, voicemails and missed calls. I've only listened to a couple but she's absolutely sobbing her heart out and pleading for me to come home so she can explain. Nothing from her friends mind you, just her. Says it all really. No idea what to do, but now I feel like rubbish. Update, 2 days later. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented. The good, the bad and the downright bizarre. Your perspectives have given me a lot to think about, and I appreciate the time you all took to offer advice and support. Now on to the update. So I eventually turned my phone back on after making the original post and was bombarded with voicemails and texts and whatnot. There were 37 missed calls, 19 voicemails, and over 50 text messages, all from Ellie. I only listened to a couple and GF was sobbing her heart out on all of them, more or less begging me to come home and let her explain. One voicemail in particular stuck with me. Through her tears, she said, "I know I don't deserve another chance, but please just let me talk to you one more time. I can't lose you like this. I can't lose the best thing that's ever happened to me because I was too stupid and insecure to stand up to my friends." My mom found me sitting on the guest bed, staring at my phone after listening to that message. She sat down beside me and put her arm around my shoulders. "You know," she said softly, "sometimes people do terrible things for reasons that made sense to them at the time, even if those reasons seem incomprehensible to everyone else. That doesn't excuse what they did, but understanding why might help you decide what to do next." To be fair, I didn't really have much choice but to eventually go back home anyway. It's a house share and I pay rent to live there. The lease has both our names on it, and I couldn't exactly afford to just walk away from that financial commitment. Plus my own mom was basically nudging me back out to let GF explain herself. "You don't have to forgive her," Mom told me as I packed up my things. "You don't even have to stay with her. But I raised you to at least hear people out, especially people you once cared about." So I went back home the next day, rehearsing what I would say in the car the whole way there. I planned to be calm, detached, to listen to her explanation without emotion and then make a rational decision. But all those plans went out the window the moment I walked through the door. She pretty much tore out of her room and threw herself at me. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she was wearing one of my old university sweatshirts, something she often did when she was feeling particularly vulnerable or missing me when I worked late. She was sobbing and trying to talk but kept crying too hard between her words to sound coherent. "I'm so sorry," was all I could make out at first, repeated over and over between gasping breaths. "Please don't leave me. Please." I know I should have probably been angrier, but I hate seeing her cry. And she wasn't just crying, she was sobbing so hard she was having trouble breathing at a few points. Despite everything, I found myself leading her to the couch, getting her a glass of water, and waiting for her to calm down enough to speak. Eventually I got her to sit down and asked her to explain exactly why I should stay with a woman who not only got with me as a dare but also still laughed about it with her vapid friends 8 months on. "It wasn't like that," she insisted. "I wasn't laughing at you, I swear. I was laughing at how stupid I was for ever listening to them in the first place." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. That's not what it sounded like from where I was standing. She took a deep breath. I know how it must have seemed. But please, let me explain everything from the beginning." A lot was said, and to summarize it so this update doesn't take all night, she more or less said this. Fake names for her friends, and I'm likely paraphrasing, but I've spent about 40 minutes trying to remember it exactly, so this is the gist of it. "GF, I didn't mean to ask you out on a dare. I wanted to date you before they even knew about you. I gave you my number first, remember? When Stacy and Tina found out I gave you my number, they looked you up on Facebook and found it hilarious that you were even trying with me. So they got this stupid fucking dare thing and told me to do it to give all uglies in the world hope." She went on to explain how these two women had been her friends since high school, and how their approval had always mattered so much to her. They were the popular, pretty girls who had inexplicably taken her under their wing when she was the awkward new kid with braces and hand-me-down clothes. "I owe them a lot," she said, staring down at her hands. Or at least I thought I did. They were there for me through my parents' divorce, through my first heartbreak, through everything. But they've always been mean. I just never thought they'd be mean to someone I cared about. Me, wow, real mature. You do remember what you said on the phone to whoever it was, right? That you never meant for us to last this long? You told me I wasn't your type? What's your type, GF? Not me, right? Too ugly for you. I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Every insecurity I'd ever had about my appearance, all of it came rushing to the surface. GF, stop saying that. You're not ugly. You're just not the type of bloke I'd have picked to date long term. But I was wrong, babe. Look at us, we've lasted nearly 9 months. I love you so much, I really do. How can I prove it to you? How? She reached for my hands, but I pulled them away. Her face fell, but she continued. Before you, I always went for guys who treated me like garbage but looked good on Instagram, she admitted. Guys Tina and Stacy approved of. Guys who made me feel like I had to be perfect all the time or they'd leave. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like I could just be myself. Me, I don't know, GF. I love you too. But all I can think about is you laughing about me behind my back to them. How can I trust you anymore? The thought of her discussing our relationship with those women, possibly mocking intimate details or making fun of my appearance, made me feel physically ill. GF, I wasn't meaningfully laughing at you. I swear I wasn't. I just don't know how to handle Tina any other way. She's always been like this. And I just go along with it to keep the peace. She explained that Tina in particular had a way of turning on people who disagreed with her, and how she'd seen friendships and relationships destroyed when someone fell out of favor with her. It's not an excuse, she said quickly, seeing my expression. I know it's not. I should have stood up to her ages ago. I should have told her to go to hell the moment she said those things about you. But I was a coward. Me, so you'd rather keep the peace than stand up for me? Is that what you're saying? GF, you're twisting my words, babe. Me, no I'm not. God, why should I stay with you, GF? Seriously, give me a reason? You laughed behind my back. You dated me on a dare given to you by Tina and Stacy, right? And you're still friends with them? You chose them and their cruelty over us and what we have? GF, we've been friends for years though. Me, I fucking give up. At this point it was just a back and forth of me trying to walk away and her professing her love and defending her friendship with the Wonder Twins while trying to make me sit back down. She followed me from room to room, alternating between tearful apologies and attempts to justify why she couldn't just cut these toxic people out of her life. You don't understand what it's like, she kept saying. They know everything about me. They've been there for every important moment in my life. Except the last 8 months, I pointed out. You know, the months you've spent building a life with me. That seemed to hit her hard. She stopped in her tracks, her expression shifting as though she was seeing something clearly for the first time. You're right, she said quietly. They haven't been there. They didn't help us move in. They didn't bring soup when I had the flu last month. They don't even know about how you surprised me with coffee in bed on Sundays, or how we have that silly dance competition while we're cooking dinner. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe she was finally getting it. But then she circled right back to making excuses for their behavior and hers, and that flicker died. I don't know, guys. I'm back home, she's constantly trying to have another talk. I'm tired. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Every time I look at her, I see both the woman I fell in love with and the woman who let her friends mock me for sport. I see her genuine remorse, but I also see her inability to completely cut ties with people who clearly bring out the worst in her. Part of me wants to believe that she really did fall for me despite her initial shallow judgment. That what we built over these 8 months was real and meaningful. But another part of me doesn't know if I can ever fully trust her again, or if I'll always be wondering if she's secretly embarrassed to be with me. Advice would be wonderful, because I'm very tempted to just pack it in.